snow. And our first poem is Snowy Day by Barbara Vance. In the winter, it's every kid's dream as snowflakes begin to appear that suddenly there'll be a blizzard and they'll cancel school for the year. Though most kids are willing to settle, and I'm inclined to agree, they could merely close school for one day. One day off would be just fine with me. A day free from all forms of homework, a day without science or math, when you leave all your school books at home and run out the door with a laugh, a day full of sledding and cocoa and snowmen who wear dad's old clothes, no writing out boring equations. After lunch, when you'd rather just doze. A snow day's a day meant for lounging, where idleness isn't condemned, a day where you sleep in till lunchtime, a day that you don't want to end. And if you are truly quite lucky, the snow will continue its flight and you'll spend the afternoon hoping the next day will be just as white. Dorothy says she picked this poem because it brought back one of her earliest childhood memories. The year was 1958 or 59. She was 4 or 5 years old, the youngest of a family of 8 siblings, of course, a Catholic family, living at the time in Montreal, Canada, where she was born. The age difference between her and her eldest sibling was 17 years. As you can imagine, Montreal gets lots of snow, even into late April. Dorothy remembers a particularly heavy snowstorm that piled up to what seemed like an additional 2 feet of snow on top of a good 3 feet of snow from previous snowfalls. Snowplows came to clear the streets, only adding to the pileup of snow along the sidewalks in front of the neighborhood. All the schools were closed because of the snow. Although she was too young at the time to have a concept of what a snow day is, not yet being in school, she shared the excitement of her school-age siblings as they all went out in snowsuits to make snow angels, build snowmen, and throw snowballs at each other and the other neighborhood kids, returning back inside their home only when their frigid fingers and toes could stand no more, begging their mother for some hot chocolate, and once sufficiently warmed, donning on their wet snowsuits for more snowy fun and frolic. At some point, her older siblings hatched a plan to tunnel through the 9-foot snow mound on the sidewalk in front of our house. They were like generals commanding their younger sibling grunts to do this and do that to help them tunnel through. It was a splendid day of engineering, involving fortifying the tunnel walls with water to coat the snow with a layer of frigid ice. Now, when children, especially teenagers, have too much unstructured time on their hands, things can escalate. And so it was that the tunnel project turned into an ice fort project with peak holes and an ammunition area stocked with a few dozen snowballs. Well, people with lots of ammunition tend to want to have a big fight. And so it was that her older sibs challenged the neighbors next door to them, the Tribbies, to an epic snowball fight that night after dinner. Their family was about the same size as hers, with a similar spread in ages. Participation by all members of the two families, including the two sets of parents, was one of the negotiated rules of the battle. Getting a later start on fortress planning, the Tribby family did the best they could, shoveling 2-foot-tall trenches to dive into to avoid being hit by snowballs. Their defenses were lame in comparison to her family's mighty 6-foot ice fort, but her memory is that the Tribbies put up a good fight. She doesn't recall who won the fight or what counted as a victory, but she knows why this memory means so much to her. She thinks it is because it is her very first memory of her whole family. From parents on down to the very youngest, playing together, laughing together, cooperating together, trying to uphold the family honor with exhilaration felt by all. The planning of this snowball battle and the engagement in it was all pretty silly, but she says that to her, its significance was that she was no longer just the littlest sister that her older sibs preferred to ignore or torture with teasing. It was an all for one and one for all event. She says that she felt truly bonded with her whole family that day. And so when she thinks of snow, she often thinks back to the great Dorothy Coleman snowball battle, feeling how much she loved her whole family on that day and has continued to love all her life. So do you have special memories of snow days? Were you sad when it was a snow day, or were you happy? What makes these memories particularly meaningful for you? And if you have something to share about a snow day, it would be good for you to come up to the mic to share it so that our Zoom attendees can also hear you. You can raise your hand to indicate you're ready. Okay. No one has a memory of snow days. Danica does.
I'll date myself. It was the blizzard of, was it 78? Is that the one, the big one? 78? Yeah. I missed the other one by 2 years. But yeah, I remember we got dumped with an incredible amount of snow in a short period of time. And I went to a little one-room schoolhouse out in the country, in a little town outside of Crystal Lake, one of the far northwest suburbs. And all of the buses, it was K through 3 there. So there weren't a lot of us, but there were 3 buses that took all of the students to and from. And every single bus came and tried to pick us up and got stuck in the circle driveway. So they had all of us kids, on the carpet in the big middle area, and asked who had parents that had vans. And my hand shot up. So my dad got a call asking if he could come and drive home the kids that were in my little neighborhood. So he still doesn't let me live that down. And he came and picked us up, but we got home and it just snowed and snowed and snowed. And the next day, there was literally a 5-foot, almost 5-foot wall of snow, like 4.5 feet, right up to our garage. The garage opened and it was just a wall. And in front of our house, a drift had blown up at an angle and then, stopped right at roof level. So it was about 12 to 14 feet tall. And of course there was no school. And it was awesome. We went out and we actually could get onto our roof from the top of the snowdrift, and which of course we did. And we jumped from the roof into the snowdrift and, rolled down it. And that snowdrift, I think, lasted a month. And we had tunnels like honeycombs carved into it. And that was one time we wished school was canceled for the year so we could play in that snowdrift every day. And I think it's a shame, I'll add, that there's no more snow days for a lot of school districts, that they've done away with those, and it's remote learning on snow days. And I think that's a shame.
I have a couple that come to mind. One of which was just kind of the universe trying to save me. In 2010, I had found out end of January that I wanted to apply to the counseling program over here at Northern for graduate school. And I was supposed to take the GRE on February 1st, 2010. Anybody remember what happened that day? I didn't have to take the GRE, which was great because I had no idea what I was doing. And I had 2 more weeks to actually learn what the test was about and raise my points like by 200. Universe always looks out for me. The other one is we knew better. We were 17 years old. My senior year, my best friend in the whole wide world, Emily Sadler, and we were just absolutely inseparable. And so for some reason, we had spent the night at my house, and then we woke up in the morning and the electricity was off in my house because of snow and cold and all the things. So we decided we were going to make the trek to her house with my grandmother's station wagon, which wasn't in such great condition. And it like kind of didn't really want to do the trip. And it was only like, a mile or 2, but we would make everything an adventure. So we got in the car and at some point like couldn't get the wheels to spin. So we just decided to abandon it on the side of the road and trekked the rest of the way to her house. Well, her house was a townhouse that had 2 bedrooms, 2 adults, 4 children, and a grandmother living in it. So it was really, really, really packed. So we decided in our infinite wisdom that the way that we wanted to ice skate, but we didn't have ice skates or a pond. So we took Finesse hair conditioner and spread it all over the kitchen floor and spent the whole afternoon ice skating. These 17-year-old girls giggling, just like absolutely manic with joy at how creative we were. And I don't remember what happened next, but I mean, that's pretty much good enough. She and I are still pretty close. She's now like an award-winning author. And we're still pretty close, and we still refer to like Finesse conditioner like as kind of like the DL like inside joke thing, but yeah, we used to make every day an adventure. Yeah, I don't know, that was special.
I will share quickly that we had a real high risk behavior that we always engaged in when it was a snow day. And that is making snow cream. And you have to rush out first thing in the morning and get the cleanest snow you can get. So you get a big container of snow and you raw eggs and sugar and mix it all together and you have snow cream. You have done it before? Mm-hmm. Oh, that is high risk behavior. Yes. No, I didn't do that. No. At the time, I think we didn't even know it was high risk, really. Our next poem is going to be is one that Dan wrote, and he's going to share it with us. And I will give him the podium.
But when I first heard about this, I was told it was about winter, not specifically about snow, but anyway, so I gave this to Dorothy. A black and white world begins with a quote by Wendell Berry. Be hopeful, though you have considered all the facts. Woke to piles of snow on dark branches, bent magnolia boughs beneath a deep gray sky. On a hill far from this snowscape, white men in black suits sit in judgment. Some not listening for truth, but searching for alibis, excuses, a way out of an avalanche of lies. Our sycamore tree stands tall, strong against cold winds, clings to the last of its autumn leaves. Coneflowers with dry stems shiver with snow between their brown seeds. When so many try to keep us either in one line or another, there is little room for tangled branches and gray wings against a cloudy January sky. Color will return to this black and white landscape. nature will have its way with us. Regardless a prejudiced jury, spring will come. Our magnolia will blossom. Geese will return. Despite the ignored facts and deep snow, we will carry on if we bring our shovels and do the work. So I don't have too much to say about it, except I always think that if poets have to explain their poems, then their poem has failed. But of course, I'm alluding to one of the many impeachments that we had. It was going on at the same time as that snow occurred. I don't know if I had the year in there or not. It was, you know, January of 2020. So that was the comparison I was making. Often for me, nature is the beginning of a poem, and I start there and go on to other things that connect. And everything's interconnected, as we all know. And so it's looking at those different comparisons and juxtapositions.
There was an invitation put out in advance of this service to bring in any poem that you've written about snow. And so now is the time. I think I know we have one, right? All right.
I worked on it all week, and then I forgot it at home. So this is by memory. It's called The Life of Snow. Born in the sky, snow settles on the earth. It glistens in the light, ready or not to be blown across fields or sculpted into mythical creatures. The sun shines bright, but the tilt is not enough. When the time is right, the spring melt will come, and it sinks into the mother, heading for the great ocean. Not a flake or a drop resists. Not exactly sure what it means. It's, to me, a little bit, snows have such a transient life that, you know, it gives us a kind of a perspective, I think. Other things takes so long to see the cycle, but with snow, it happens so quickly.
That's going to be hard to live up to, but does anybody else have any contributions they'd like to share?
Yeah, I have a haiku.
Okay, I have one snow haiku. This is from Jack. When the snow arrives, my heart always beats faster, expecting much fun. And Corey shares that she got to be the hero during that big blizzard that Danica mentioned by being the one to dig her family out, because the snow was piled up against her door also. Well, in the interest of time, we are going to skip on to the last poem, the one by Wallace Stevens, Snowman. And I'd like to invite Dan to read that poem to us.
One must have a mind of winter to regard the frost in the boughs of the pine trees crusted with snow, and have been cold a long time to behold the junipers shagged with ice, the spruces rough and the distant glitter of the January sun, and not to think of any misery in the sound of the wind, in the sound of a few leaves, which is the sound of the land full of the same wind that is blowing in the same bare place for the listeners who listen in the snow. And nothing himself beholds nothing that is not there, and the nothing that is. Dorothy says, I chose this poem for exploration today because when I first read it, the poem both intrigued me and completely baffled me. I was intrigued by the idea of a snowman, 2 words, which is not the kind of snowman, 1 word, which is made of snow. Stevens's snowman is like a human being in that it has a mind, one that observes and listens, but in particular, wintry way. Evidently, there is some controversy among interpreters about whether Stevens thinks this is good to be like snowman with 2 words he describes, one who views nature solely as it is itself, apart from our feeling about it, or is saying that doing so is not possible. I myself don't think he is encouraging us to be the snowmen or women that he describes, but his poem did make me ponder what other ways it may be good to be double word snowmen and women.
Well, hopefully this has given you something to reflect on when you go back out into the snowy day today. At this time, we're going to collect the offering, and so you can join me in reading the